Ambassador Chen Wei stood before the Galactic Council chamber, her hands clasped behind her back. The massive circular room stretched hundreds of meters across, filled with representatives from 47 different species. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing data streams and star maps. But Chen knew none of them were paying attention to her presentation. The Kralix delegate, a massive creature covered in dark blue scales, made a sound that his translator rendered as laughter. "The humans wish to lecture us on military restraint again," he announced to the chamber. "Perhaps next they will teach us how to throw rocks at our enemies." More laughter rippled through the council. Chen had heard it all before. For 50 years, Earth had been part of this grand alliance of spacefaring civilizations. For 50 years, they had been treated like children playing at politics. "Ambassador Chen," the council speaker said, her crystalline form refracting light across the room, "your proposal to limit plasma weapons in civilian sectors has been noted. However, the council feels that humanity lacks the military experience to advise on such matters." Chen felt the familiar weight in her chest. "Speaker, with respect, humanity has extensive experience with unrestricted warfare. That is precisely why we recommend experience?" A Vren delegate interrupted, his forearms gesturing dismissively. "You have one small planet, one system. You have never fought a real war among the stars. The Kralix Empire spans 2,000 worlds. The Vren Confederacy controls an entire spiral arm. What could Earth possibly teach us about conflict?" Chen pulled up historical data on her display tablet. Images appeared in the holographic field above the council floor. Cities in ruins, mushroom clouds rising over continents, mass graves stretching beyond the horizon. "These are from our world wars," she said quietly. "In less than 50 years during our 20th century, we killed over 100 million of our own people. We developed weapons that could sterilize our entire planet. We brought ourselves to the edge of extinction. The Thalorian ambassador, a being of pure energy contained in a specialized suit, flickered with what might have been amusement. And this is supposed to impress us? You nearly destroyed yourselves with primitive weapons. This proves our point exactly. Humanity is not ready for real power." "That is not the point," Chen said, her voice steady despite the frustration building inside her. "The point is that we learned. We understood what happens when there are no limits. When every weapon becomes acceptable, when destruction becomes a casual choice." The Kralix delegate stood, his enormous form towering even through the holographic projection. "We have limits, human. We have honor. We have codes of warfare that your species cannot comprehend. Your fear of your own shadows does not apply to superior civilizations." The vote was called. Chen's proposal failed, as she knew it would. 43 species voted against. Only Earth and 3 minor colonies voted in favor. As the council moved to other business, Chen gathered her materials and prepared to leave. She had delivered 17 similar proposals over her 10 years as ambassador. All had failed. The galaxy thought Earth was weak, cowardly, too afraid to embrace its potential. If only they knew the truth. Chen remembered her first day at the Solar Defense Command, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The tour guide had taken her through corridors that stretched for kilometers. Behind sealed doors were weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Entire laboratories dedicated to theoretical destruction. Ships that existed only as classified blueprints. And everywhere, the signs. Sealed by Unification Treaty Article 7. Emergency Protocol only. The Unification Wars had ended 90 years ago. After the nations of Earth had finally exhausted themselves fighting, after the last nuclear winter had cleared, the survivors had made a choice. They built a new world government, yes. They reached for the stars, yes. But they also sealed away their capacity for total war. Not destroyed it, sealed it. Because humanity knew something that the galaxy had forgotten. The weapons you create will eventually be used. As Chen walked through the council corridors toward her transport, her communication device buzzed. She glanced at the message and felt her blood run cold. It was from Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network. Priority Alpha classification. She stepped into a private communication booth and entered her security codes. The face of Admiral Zhang Lei appeared on the screen. His expression told Chen everything she needed to know before he spoke a single word. "Ambassador, we have a situation. Long-range sensors at Station Kepler have detected massive spatial distortions at the galactic rim. Something is coming through from dark space." Chen's hands gripped the edge of the console. "How massive?" 50,000 objects so far. all artificial. All moving in perfect coordination. Zhang paused. Chen, they consumed 3 outer rim colonies before we even knew they were there. The colonies just disappeared. No distress signals. No survivors. Just gone. What are they? We don't know yet. But they're heading toward the core systems. Toward populated space. Zhang's jaw tightened. And Chen, they're accelerating. Whatever they are, they're not here to talk. Chen closed her eyes. After 50 years of peace, after 50 years of restraint, after 50 years of being called weak and frightened and unprepared, the nightmare scenario was finally here. Something was coming that might require humanity to break their most sacred promise to themselves. How long until the Council knows? She asked. Our intelligence suggests their sensors will detect the anomaly within 72 hours. The outer colonies might have hours before they're hit. Prepare the preliminary reports, Chen said. I need to brief the Council immediately. And Admiral, start running the scenarios. All of them, Zhang understood. His face became a mask of professional calm, but Chen saw the fear in his eyes. Not fear of the unknown enemy, fear of what humanity would have to become to fight them. Including Protocol Omega? He asked. Chen thought of the laughter in the council chamber, the mockery, the casual dismissal of Earth's warnings. Then she thought of the billions of innocent beings across the galaxy who would die if this threat was not stopped. She thought of the weapons sealed in their vaults, the ships hidden in the dark, the soldiers trained for a war they prayed would never come. Yes, she said finally. Include Protocol Omega. It's time the galaxy learned why we were so afraid. The screen went dark. Chen stood alone in the communication booth, feeling the weight of what was coming. The other species thought humanity's restraint was weakness. They would soon learn the terrible truth. Humanity had not been afraid of the galaxy. Humanity had been afraid of itself. And now, for the first time in 50 years, that fear would be proven justified. The first world to die was Kralix Prime 7, a mining colony on the outer rim. 3 billion Kralix workers and their families lived there, harvesting rare minerals from the planet's crust. The warning came too late. By the time the emergency broadcast reached the inner systems, the planet was already gone. Not destroyed, consumed. The Kralix Empire deployed its 7th Fleet to investigate. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, capable of cracking planets. Admiral Vorath, a legendary Kralix warrior with 400 years of combat experience, led the fleet personally. He had fought in 30 major conflicts. He had never lost a battle. The fleet arrived at the coordinates where Kralix Prime 7 should have been. Instead, they found something else. The planet was still there, but it had changed. The surface was covered in a writhing mass of black material. Millions of structures jutted from the surface like thorns, and surrounding the planet was a cloud of objects, each one the size of a small ship. All weapons, full power, Vorath commanded. Destroy everything. The Kralix fleet opened fire. Energy beams capable of boiling oceans lanced through space. Missiles that could shatter moons streaked toward their targets. For 10 seconds, space itself seemed to burn with unleashed power. Then the cloud of objects moved. They were fast. Impossibly fast. They swarmed over the Kralix ships like insects, cutting through shields as if they were not there. The flagship's bridge camera captured the last moments. Vorath watched as the black shapes began tearing through his ship's hull. He had time to whisper one message before the transmission cut off. They are endless. The entire 7th Fleet was destroyed in 18 minutes. Not a single Kralix ship escaped. 3 days later, the Vren Confederacy lost contact with 4 of their core worlds. The Confederacy's response was immediate and overwhelming. They deployed their ultimate weapon, a device that could ignite a planet's atmosphere and turn an entire world into a brief star. They used it on one of their own lost worlds, hoping to stop whatever had taken it. The planet burned for 6 hours. When the fires cleared, the black structures were still there, slightly damaged but already repairing themselves. The swarm had survived a weapon that should have sterilized all life, and now they were spreading faster. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 2 weeks after the first attack. The chamber that had been filled with laughter and casual arrogance was now silent with fear. 53 species now attended, up from 47. The ones on the rim had sent every ship they could spare, fleeing toward the galactic core. We estimate 70 worlds have been lost, the council speaker reported, her crystalline form flickering with stress. Population estimates suggest 40 billion dead or missing. The entity we are facing appears to be a form of swarm intelligence. They consume biological matter and convert planetary resources into more of themselves. They are calling them the Devourers. Ambassador Chen Wei stood at Earth Station watching the tactical displays. Red zones spread across the galactic map like a disease. Every hour, more worlds went dark. She had prepared for many scenarios, but the speed of this disaster was beyond even her worst projections. "We must unite our fleets," the Thalorian ambassador said, his energy form burning brighter than usual. "Every species must contribute their full military strength. No holding back. No reserves. The Vren Confederacy pledges all available forces," the Vren delegate announced. "We recommend a defensive perimeter at the beta sectors. We can hold there while we develop a counter-strategy. The Kralix Empire will lead the assault forces," said the new Kralix delegate, replacing the one who had mocked Chen just weeks ago. "We have weapons that can destroy entire fleets. We will burn them from space." Chen waited for the initial panic to subside before she spoke. "Speaker, I request authorization to implement Terran Protocol Omega." The chamber fell silent. Chen felt dozens of eyes, sensors, and other organs turning toward her. The Kralix delegate's scales rippled with what might have been confusion or anger. "What is Protocol Omega? Some human defensive plan?" "It is our military doctrine for existential threats," Chen said simply. "It requires full council authorization to implement." The Thalorian ambassador flickered. "You wish to contribute Earth's fleet? How many ships can you provide? 50, 100? "The exact numbers are classified," Chen replied. "But we can contribute significantly to the defense effort. However, I need council authorization first. This is not negotiable." The Vren delegate made a dismissive gesture with three of his arms. "We do not have time for human bureaucracy. The Devourers are consuming worlds daily. Whatever ships you have, send them. We will take any help we can get, even from—" He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "Less experienced militaries." The Kralix delegate was less diplomatic. "With respect, Ambassador Chen, this is not the time for humanity to pretend it has military power. We know you have maybe 200 small vessels. You have never built true warships. Your technology is decades behind ours. Send whatever you have, but do not waste our time with protocols and procedures. We need real weapons, not human pea shooters." Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had spent 10 years trying to warn them. 10 years of proposals, demonstrations, and careful explanations. They had laughed every time. They had called Earth weak, cowardly, unprepared. They had no idea what was coming. What humanity would have to become to fight this threat. She pulled up her tablet and entered a series of codes. On Earth, in the deep command center beneath the Atlantic, alarms began to sound. Admiral Zhang Lei received the authorization he had been waiting for. In the Oort cloud, in secret shipyards that had been building in silence for 5 decades, lights began to power on. Seals that had been locked since the Unification Wars began to open. "Very well," Chen said quietly. "Council authorization is not required. Under the Human Unification Charter, when facing extinction-level events, the Solar Defense Command has full operational authority. I was hoping for your support, not your permission." She met the Kralix delegate's eyes across the holographic space. "You wanted real weapons. You mocked our restraint. You called us weak and unprepared." She paused, letting the weight of her next words settle over the chamber. "You have no idea what you have just unleashed. Earth's military will deploy within 48 hours. I suggest you clear the space around your defensive perimeters. You will need room for what is coming." The speaker looked uncertain. "Ambassador Chen, how many ships are you deploying?" Chen closed her tablet. "Enough," she said. "Admiral Zhang will coordinate with your military commanders. I recommend you listen to his strategies carefully. He has been preparing for this scenario for 30 years. As she left the chamber, Chen heard the delegates begin to argue among themselves. Some were curious. Most were dismissive. The Kralix delegate's final comment followed her out. "Let them send their toys. We will see what humanity's fear has built." Chen did not turn around. She had seen the manifests. She had toured the hidden shipyards. She had watched the training exercises that had never been shown to galactic observers. The other species thought they knew what war was. They thought they understood military power. They had fought their clean, honorable battles with their codes and their limited destruction. They were about to learn what real war looked like. What humanity had spent 50 years trying to prevent. What Earth had kept sealed away because they understood the terrible truth. Some weapons should never be used. Some tactics should never be taught. Some strategies should never be considered. But the Devourers had left them no choice. And now the galaxy would discover why humanity had been so desperately afraid to open those sealed vaults. They would learn that Earth's restraint had never been weakness. It had been mercy. And now that mercy was withdrawn, the Vren defensive perimeter at Beta Sector stretched across 3 star systems. 12,000 warships from 17 different species formed the line. It was the largest military gathering in galactic history. The commanders were confident. They had weapons that could shatter planets, shields that could absorb star-level energy, and tactics refined over thousands of years of warfare. Then humanity arrived. The first ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. It was massive, 5 times larger than the biggest Kralix dreadnought. Its hull was a dark gray, covered in angular armor plates that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols marked its side in white paint. Utes Remembrance, what is that? Commander Thesh of the Vren fleet asked, staring at his display. Identify that vessel. Before his sensors officer could respond, more ships arrived, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. They kept coming, emerging from jump space in perfect formation. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, dreadnoughts, and ship classes that had no equivalent in galactic databases. Each one bore the same dark hull, the same angular design, the same cold efficiency of purpose. Count them, Thesh ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Still arriving, Commander. Current count is 3,200 ships. No, 3,500. Commander, they are still coming. The human fleet filled the space around the defensive perimeter. They moved with precision that seemed impossible for such numbers. Not a single collision, not a single wasted movement. They took positions that transformed the defensive line into something else entirely, a geometric pattern that Commander Thesh's tactical computer could not fully analyze. A communication channel opened. Admiral Zhang Lei's face appeared on screens across the Allied fleet. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes that had seen things no one should see. This is Admiral Zhang Lei of the United Terran Expeditionary Force. We are assuming tactical command of this operation. All ships will follow our coordination protocols. Transmitting now. Commander Thesh felt his throat tighten. Admiral Zhang, the Vren Confederacy has commanded galactic military operations for 3 centuries. We do not simply hand over authority. Commander Thesh, Zhang interrupted, his voice calm but absolutely firm. In the next 6 hours, a devourer swarm estimated at 100,000 units will arrive at this position. You have 3 choices. 1. Follow our battle plan and possibly survive. 2. Follow your own plan and definitely die. 3. Retreat and let us handle this alone. You cannot possibly, Thesh began. Zhang pulled up a tactical display. Your current defensive formation has 17 critical weaknesses. The Devourers will exploit 8 of them within the first 10 minutes. Your flagship will be overrun in 12 minutes. The entire line will collapse in 43 minutes. I know this because I have run this simulation 6,000 times over the past 30 years. Thesh looked at his own tactical officers. They were running the analysis. One of them looked up with fear in his eyes. Commander, the human analysis is... It is accurate. How did they know? Because we have been preparing for this war since we joined the galactic community, Zhang said. We did not know what form the threat would take. We did not know when it would arrive. But we knew it would come. War always comes. Now are you going to let pride kill your crews or are you going to work with us? Commander Thesh made his decision. We will follow your protocols, Admiral. Similar conversations happened across the fleet. Some commanders accepted immediately. Others required more convincing. A few, too proud or too stubborn, broke formation and prepared to fight their own way. Zhang watched them go without comment. He had learned long ago that some people needed to see proof before they believed. The Devourers arrived exactly on schedule. The swarm emerged from dark space like a black tide. Millions of small units, thousands of larger constructs, and something new. Massive seed ships that pulsed with stolen energy from consumed worlds. They moved toward the defensive line with absolute confidence. They had destroyed every fleet that had faced them. This would be no different. Then the human weapons spoke. The first volley was unlike anything the galactic species had seen. Missiles that did not simply explode but opened tears in space itself. Energy beams that ignored shields and boiled matter at the molecular level. Mines that waited silent in the void until devourer units passed. then activated and created localized gravity wells that crushed hundreds of enemies at once. The Kralix observers watched in shock as human ships deployed weapons that violated their understanding of physics. "What are those?" the Kralix fleet coordinator asked over the command channel. "Those energy signatures are impossible." "They are reality-shearing warheads," Zhang replied calmly. "They break the bonds that hold matter together. We developed them during the resource wars of the 21st century. They were banned by Earth law in 2087 after we saw what they did to population centers." A Vren captain watched as a human destroyer deployed something that looked like a cloud of glittering dust. The dust spread through a section of the Devourer swarm. Within seconds, the enemy units began tearing themselves apart from the inside. "Admiral Zhang, what was that weapon?" "Consciousness targeting virus," Zhang said. "It invades any form of neural network and rewrites basic survival programming. The infected units perceive their own bodies as threats. It was designed during the neural wars of 2043. We banned it after it accidentally spread to civilian populations. Every weapon humanity deployed came with a history. Every tactic had a body count attached to it. The Berlin Protocol, which used sequential strikes to herd enemies into kill zones, had first been used in the Euro-Asian collapse. 14 million casualties in 6 hours. The Damascus strategy, which identified and destroyed command nodes in perfect sequence, had been refined during the African Continental War. 8 nations collapsed in 3 days. The Thalorian observer, his energy form flickering with something between awe and horror, sent a private message to Ambassador Chen. "You let us mock you. For 50 years you let us believe you were weak. Why?" Chen's response was simple. "Because we hoped we would never need to show you the truth. Every weapon out there represents a lesson we learned by killing our own people. We sealed them away because we understood what they meant. They mean we are very, very good at ending life." The battle raged for 6 hours. The Devourer swarm, which had destroyed fleets 10 times this size, found itself being systematically dismantled. Human ships moved through the chaos like surgeons, each strike precise and devastating. They used the other galactic species' ships as well, coordinating their fire in ways those species had never imagined. A Kralix dreadnought found itself receiving targeting data from 3 human cruisers, allowing it to hit targets it could not even see. Vren fighters discovered that following human attack patterns increased their effectiveness by 300%. Commander Thesh watched the battle unfold from his flagship. "It is like they are playing chess while we were still learning the pieces," he said quietly. "Every move connects to 5 others. Every strike creates opportunities for the next. This is not warfare. This is mathematics made lethal." By the time the battle ended, the Devourer swarm was in retreat. It was the first time they had been turned back since entering the galaxy. The cost was high. The Allied fleet lost 800 ships. 17,000 crew members died. But the line held. The Devourers did not pass. Admiral Zhang addressed the fleet after the battle. His face was tired, and his eyes held a sadness that had not been there before. "All commanders, prepare for pursuit operations. This is not over. The Devourers will regroup and adapt. We must press them now while they are disorganized." A Kralix captain asked the question everyone was thinking. "Admiral, how did humanity develop such weapons? Such tactics? You have never fought a war among the stars." Zhang was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of history. "We did not need to fight in space to understand war. We fought on our own world, brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. We developed weapons that could end our species because we were angry, afraid, and convinced we were right. We nearly destroyed ourselves, and when we finally stopped, when we finally looked at what we had become, we made a promise. We would never be that again. We would seal away our capacity for destruction and only use it to protect, never to conquer." He looked directly into the camera, and through it, at every being watching across the fleet. "You mocked our restraint. You thought we were weak. You did not understand that our restraint was not weakness. It was us being terrified of ourselves, terrified of how good we are at killing, and now you have seen why we were afraid. This is what humanity becomes when we stop holding back. Remember that feeling. Because I promise you, when this war is over, we will seal these weapons away again, and we will pray we never have to use them again." The transmission ended. Across the Allied fleet and ships of 40 different species, soldiers sat in silence. They had wanted to see Earth's strength. They had gotten their wish. And now they understood why humanity had been so desperate to avoid this moment. The humans had not been afraid of the galaxy. They had been afraid of becoming monsters again. And now to save everyone, that is exactly what they had to be. The war continued for 3 months. What began as a desperate defense became a calculated offensive. Under Admiral Zhang Lei's coordination, the Allied fleet pushed the Devourers back system by system. The massive human command ship, the UTS Never Again, became the nerve center for operations across 20 sectors. From its bridge, Zhang orchestrated a galaxy-wide counterattack that military historians would study for generations, but the cost was visible in more than casualty. Reports that Ambassador Chen Wei watched from the observation deck of the Never Again as human ships executed what Zhang called the Scorched Earth Protocol. A devourer-held world was being systematically sterilized, not just the invaders, but every trace of biological matter that they had consumed and converted. The planet would be dead, but the devourers would gain nothing from it. Chen felt sick as she watched the bombardment. This was supposed to be a last resort. Now it was Tuesday's operation. She found Zhang on the bridge 6 hours later. He was studying tactical displays, his face showing no emotion as he marked another system for cleansing operations. Chen noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands shook slightly when he thought no one was watching. "Admiral, we need to talk," she said quietly. Zhang did not look up from his displays. "We are winning, Ambassador. The Devourer advance has been stopped. We have reclaimed 40 systems. The tide has turned. At what cost?" Chen asked. "I just watched us destroy a planet that might have been saved. The biological matter the Devourers consumed could have been recovered, reconstructed. We have the technology. We do not have the time," Zhang replied. His voice was cold, professional. The warmth she remembered from their earlier conversations was gone. "Every hour we spend trying to save one world is an hour the Devourers use to fortify 3 others. The mathematics are simple. We save the living by accepting that the dead are gone." "That is not the mathematics talking," Chen said. "That is you becoming something you swore never to be." For the first time, Zhang looked at her directly. His eyes were hard. "You authorized Protocol Omega, Ambassador. You opened the vaults. Did you think the weapons were the only things we sealed away? The tactics come with a price. To use them effectively, we must think like the people who developed them. Efficient, ruthless, willing to make choices that normal people cannot make." Chen felt cold. "Zhang, you are describing war criminals. The people who created these protocols were tried and imprisoned after the Unification Wars. And now we are using their knowledge to save the galaxy," Zhang said. "I find the irony both appropriate and disturbing, but it does not change what must be done." A communication alert interrupted them. It was Captain Sarah Chen, no relation to the ambassador, calling from the destroyer UTS Dresden. "Admiral, we have located a Devourer seed ship attempting to escape toward dark space. It is heavily damaged but still functional. Requesting permission to deploy a consciousness virus and capture it for study." Ambassador Chen started to speak, but Zhang cut her off. "Negative, Captain. Deploy reality-shearing torpedoes and destroy it. No captures, no risks. Sir, this could be our chance to understand their biology. If we could communicate with them, find a weakness." "Captain Chen," Zhang said, his voice like ice. "The consciousness virus takes 6 hours to fully infect a target of that size. In 6 hours, that seed ship could replicate itself 4 times. Mathematics says we kill it now. Deploy the torpedoes." "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, and the channel closed. Ambassador Chen stared at Zhang. 6 months ago, you would have authorized the capture operation. You would have taken the risk for the potential intelligence gain. 6 months ago, I had not watched 30 billion beings die, Zhang said. 6 months ago, I still believed we could fight a clean war. That belief died along with the population of Vren Secondary. He pulled up a file on his display. "Do you know what happened at Vren Secondary? We tried to save them. We held back our most destructive weapons because there were civilians still on the planet. We spent 4 days trying to evacuate them while fighting the Devourers with conventional weapons. Do you know what the Devourers did in those 4 days? They converted the civilian population into more of themselves. 3 billion Vren became part of the enemy. When we finally sterilized the planet, we were not just killing Devourers. We were killing the people we tried to save." Ambassador Chen had no response. She had read the reports. The psychological trauma to human crews after Vren Secondary had been severe. 12 soldiers had required immediate psychiatric discharge. 5 had taken their own lives. Zhang's expression softened slightly. I know what I am becoming, Ambassador. I can feel it happening. Every day the decisions get easier. The mathematics get clearer. The acceptable losses grow larger. I am turning into exactly what we feared. But if I do not, more people die. So I make the choice. I become the monster so others do not have to. Over the next month, the pattern continued. Human tactics grew more brutal, more efficient, more devastating. The other galactic species watched with a mixture of awe and fear. The Devourers were being systematically destroyed. But the cost to humanity's soul was becoming visible. A young Thalorian officer found a human Marine sitting alone after a battle. The Marine was crying, something the Thalorian had never seen a warrior do. Why do you weep? The Thalorian asked. We were victorious. The Marine looked up. His name tag read Kowalski. You want to know why? Because I just used a weapon that my great-grandfather helped develop. You know what he did with it? He killed 400,000 people in the Chicago enclave. Civilians, children. He spent the rest of his life in prison, knowing what he had done. And I just used the same weapon to kill 1 million Devourer units. The commanders tell me it was necessary. The tactical computers say it was optimal. But I used a weapon that my family sealed away in shame because we knew it was evil, and it was necessary. The Thalorian did not understand at first. Then slowly the realization came. The humans were not celebrating their victories. They were mourning what they had to become to achieve them. Every weapon carried guilt. Every tactic carried shame. Humanity was winning the war by sacrificing the peace they had spent a century building. The turning point came at the Battle of the Nexus Core, the central junction of 3 major trade routes. The Devourers had concentrated their remaining forces there, preparing for a final stand. Admiral Zhang assembled the Allied fleet, now numbering over 20,000 ships. The battle plan was simple and absolutely brutal. They would use a weapon called the Finality Device. When Zhang explained it to the other commanders, there was silence on the communication channel. The weapon would collapse the dimensional barriers in the target area, creating a rift into dark space itself. Anything caught in the effect would be pulled into a dimension where physical laws did not function. They would effectively cease to exist. This will destroy the Devourers, Zhang said. It will also destabilize 3-star systems permanently. Any planets in those systems will be lost. The trade routes through the Nexus Core will be unusable for centuries. Commander Thesh, who had become one of Zhang's most trusted allies, spoke carefully. Admiral, those systems have been evacuated, but they are still valuable. Is there no other way? There are other ways, Zhang admitted. They involve a 6-month campaign, 300,000 more casualties, and a significant chance the Devourers will escape and rebuild. The Finality Device ends this war today. The mathematics are clear. Ambassador Chen, listening from Earth, sent an urgent message. Zhang, this is exactly what we were afraid of. You are choosing total destruction over patience. You are becoming what we swore never to be. Zhang's response was immediate and cold. I am becoming what is necessary. The galaxy wanted strength. They mocked our restraint. Now they have our strength and they do not like how it looks, but I will not apologize for keeping them alive to judge me. He looked at the assembled commanders. We use the Finality Device in 6 hours. Prepare your fleets, and when this is over, when the war is won, remember what we had to do. Remember what humanity had to become, because we will seal these weapons away again. We will try to go back to being the people we were. And we will fail. You cannot unsee what we have seen. You cannot undo what we have done. But we can try. That is all any of us can do. The device was deployed as planned. The Devourers were destroyed. 3-star systems became permanent scars on the galaxy, regions where reality itself was broken, and humanity stood victorious, covered in the ashes of the monsters they had to become to win. 6 months after the last Devourer was destroyed, the Galactic Council convened for a ceremony. They called it a celebration of victory. Ambassador Chenwei knew better. She could see it in the way other delegates looked at the human section, not with mockery anymore, with fear. The chamber had been rebuilt after Devourer attacks damaged it. New crystalline walls reflected light in patterns that were supposed to be hopeful, but Chen noticed how the seating had changed. Human delegates now sat in the central position, where the speaker traditionally stood. No one had voted on this. It had simply happened. Power had shifted, and everyone knew it. The speaker, her crystalline form now bearing cracks that would never fully heal, addressed the assembly. Today we honor those who saved us from extinction. 40 billion beings died in the Devourer War, but 12 trillion survived. The mathematics of gratitude are overwhelming. Chen felt sick hearing the word mathematics used that way. Admiral Zhang had said the same thing too many times during the war. Cold calculations, acceptable losses, necessary sacrifices. The language of efficiency had replaced the language of compassion. The ceremony continued with military honors, speeches from survivors, and presentations of medals that seemed meaningless. When it came time for the human delegation to speak, everyone expected Admiral Zhang. Instead, Chen stood and walked to the central podium. She looked across the chamber at delegates from species who had once laughed at her. The Kralix representative, whose empire had lost 300 worlds. The Vren delegate, whose species had been reduced to half its population. The Thalorian ambassador, whose energy form flickered with barely contained trauma. They were not laughing now. "You want to thank us," Chen began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "You want to honor our sacrifice and celebrate our victory. I will not accept your thanks." Shocked whispers rippled through the delegates. The speaker's form brightened with confusion. "Ambassador Chen, we only wish to show our gratitude." "Gratitude for what?" Chen interrupted. "For becoming what we spent a century trying to prevent? For unsealing weapons we swore we would never use? For teaching the galaxy that the only response to overwhelming force is even greater force?" She felt tears building but forced them back. "You mocked our restraint. For 50 years you called us weak, cowardly, unprepared. You laughed at our warnings. You dismissed our proposals for limiting military power. You told us we did not understand real warfare." She pulled up holographic displays showing battle footage from the war. Human ships deploying reality-shearing weapons. Consciousness viruses spreading through devourer swarms. The moment the finality device activated and erased 3 star systems from existence. "You were right. We did not understand your kind of warfare. We understood something much worse. We understood total war. War without limits. War where anything that helps you win becomes acceptable. And now you have seen what that looks like." A Kralix delegate stood. "Ambassador, without humanity's intervention, we would all be dead. You saved us." "We saved you by becoming monsters," Chen replied. "Every weapon we used we had banned on Earth because we knew what they did. Every tactic we deployed we had outlawed because we understood the cost. We did not save you. We showed you what we had been protecting you from. We showed you what happens when restraint is mistaken for weakness." She turned to look at the empty seat where Admiral Zhang should have been sitting. He had resigned his commission the day after the war ended. He was last seen boarding a transport to a remote human colony, as far from populated space as possible. 300 other senior human officers had done the same. They could not live with what they had become, even though everyone told them they were heroes. "We did not want to fight this war," Chen continued. "Not because we were afraid of the Devourers. We were afraid of ourselves. We knew what we would have to do. We knew what we would have to become, and we were right to be afraid. You called us the galaxy's saviors. We are not saviors. We are a cautionary tale." The chamber remained silent. Chen brought up casualty statistics. 40 billion dead, 300 systems destroyed or permanently damaged, 17 species reduced to endangered status. And you know what the worst part is? We won efficiently. Admiral Zhang's tactics minimized Allied casualties. If we had fought your way, following your military doctrines and codes of honor, the death toll would have been 3 times higher. We saved lives by being absolutely ruthless, and that is the lesson you need to learn. A young Vren officer, barely old enough to serve, raised his hand tentatively. Chen nodded for him to speak. "Ambassador, what lesson should we learn? That restraint is weakness after all?" "No," Chen said firmly. "The lesson is that restraint is strength precisely because of what happens when it is removed. You saw what humanity became when we stopped holding back. We were efficient, effective, absolutely lethal, and we hated every moment of it. Strength is not about how much damage you can do. Strength is about how much damage you choose not to do." She pulled up files that few outside the human government had seen. Psychological evaluations of human soldiers after the war. 62% of our combat personnel are receiving treatment for severe trauma. Not from what was done to them, from what they had to do. 8,000 soldiers have taken their own lives since the war ended. Not because they were weak, because they understood what they had become and could not live with it. Commander Thesh, who had fought alongside humans throughout the war, stood slowly. Ambassador Chen, with respect, your soldiers saved my fleet. They saved my world. The tactics were harsh, yes, but they were necessary. Surely they can take pride in that. Can they? Chen asked. Captain Sarah Chen, who you awarded the Medal of Unity, has not left her quarters in 3 months. She follows her orders perfectly. She used consciousness viruses, reality weapons, and extinction-level tactics. And every night she dreams about the faces of the people who developed those weapons. War criminals who spent their lives in prison, knowing they had created tools of genocide. She used those same tools to save you. Tell me, Commander, should she feel pride or shame? The chamber had no answer. Chen continued, her voice softer now. Humanity will be sealing our weapons again. All of them. The ships will be decommissioned. The technology will be locked away. The tactics will be classified and buried. We will try to go back to being the people we were before. We will fail. You cannot unsee what we have seen. You cannot undo what we have done. But we will try, because the alternative is to accept that this is what we are, and we refuse to accept that. She looked directly at the speaker. The Galactic Council wanted to honor us today. Here is how you honor us. Learn from what you saw. Understand that every species has the capacity for great destruction. The difference between civilization and barbarism is not the weapons you have. It is the weapons you choose not to use. We held back for 50 years. We tried to teach you that. You laughed. So we stopped holding back and you saw the result. Do not make that mistake again. Chen pulled up a final display. It was a proposal, similar to the ones she had submitted for a decade before the war. Limits on military weapons, restrictions on destructive capacity, protocols for restraint in warfare. This is the same proposal you rejected 17 times. I am submitting it again, not as a suggestion, as a condition. If humanity is to remain part of this council, you will adopt these restrictions. All of you. Because we have seen what happens when military power has no limits. We became that. We will not allow it to happen again. The Kralix delegates started to object. You cannot dictate terms to the entire council. Yes, we can, Chen said quietly. Because you are afraid of us now. You saw what we can do. You know that if we chose to, we could conquer this entire galaxy in less than a year. Admiral Zhang ran those simulations too. He never showed them to anyone because they terrified him. But they exist. And now you understand that our restraint is not weakness. It is a choice. A choice we are making every day not to become the thing you need to fear. She closed her displays. You wanted to thank humanity for saving you. Here is how you thank us. Prove that we did not sacrifice our souls for nothing. Prove that the galaxy can learn from our mistakes. Adopt these restrictions. Build a civilization that does not need another Earth to save it. Because if this happens again, if another existential threat emerges, we may not be able to come back from what we would have to become, and that terrifies us more than any enemy ever could. Ambassador Chen returned to her seat. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, one delegate stood and signaled agreement with the proposal. Then another, then more. Within an hour, the Galactic Council had unanimously adopted humanity's restrictions on military power. It was not gratitude. It was not admiration. It was fear. But Chen accepted it. Fear had kept humanity restrained for a century. Perhaps it would work for the galaxy too. 3 months later, Chen visited Admiral Zhang at his remote colony. She found him working in a garden, growing earth vegetables in alien soil. He looked older than his years, his hands shaking as he planted seeds. The council adopted the restrictions, she told him. Every species, even the Kralix. Zhang nodded without looking up. Because they saw what we became. Yes. Do you think it will last, he asked. Or will they forget, grow complacent, start believing they could do what we did without the cost? Chen sat down beside him in the dirt. I do not know. But we showed them the truth. Real power is not about destruction. It is about restraint. Real strength is choosing not to use the weapons you have. Zhang finally looked at her. His eyes were haunted. I won the war, Chen. I saved the galaxy. And I cannot sleep at night because of what I had to do to win. Every battle, every tactic, every weapon I used. They were all things we swore we would never do again. And they were necessary. How do you live with that? You live by remembering why we sealed those weapons in the first place, Chen said. You live by making sure the next generation understands the cost. You live by growing gardens and trying to create something instead of destroying things. She helped him plant the seeds in silence. Above them, ships from 47 species patrolled the borders of galactic space. They followed human protocols now. Limited firepower, restricted tactics, rules of engagement that prioritized life over efficiency. And in every ship, in every command center, in every military academy across the galaxy, instructors taught a new lesson, the lesson of Earth, the species that saved the galaxy by becoming monsters, the species that showed the difference between strength and brutality, the species that proved the most dangerous weapon is not the one that destroys the most. It is the one you choose never to use. The galactic calendar was reset. Every species now marked time as BTE and ATE, before Terran engagement and after. Not to celebrate humanity's power, but to remember the galaxy that forgot the difference between strength and brutality until Earth reminded them. Not to honor the warriors who fought, but to mourn what they had to become. And most importantly, to remember that some victories cost more than defeat ever could. Admiral Zhang planted the last seed and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, humanity's weapons were being sealed away again, locked behind codes and protocols and promises that they would only be used in the most desperate circumstances. The vaults were closing. The ships were being decommissioned. The soldiers were going home. But none of them would ever be the same. That was the real cost of victory. Not the billions who died. Not the systems destroyed. But the knowledge that humanity had become exactly what they feared most. And they had been right to be afraid all along. It was necessary, Zhang whispered to the seeds. It was all necessary. But necessity, they had learned, was a cold comfort when you woke up screaming in the night, remembering the things necessary had made you do.